Mic check, 1 2 1 2. We actually gonna start the stream on time today. What's up to my Twitch family? How y'all doing? This ain't gonna work. But what's up, y'all? Hold on, I'm trying to figure out my mic situation real quick. That'll work. Yeah, I got my mic placed differently. I'm still recording like bits and pieces for the album and stuff. So I'm shifting my mic around a lot just to make sure. Man, it's not perfect, but fuck it. Making sure that my mic, my mic placement is good, like where I record it, and trying to adjust with that and like podcasting and shit. It's or live streaming and shit. It's been kind of up and down, but yeah, what's up? I'm gonna give it a few minutes. Just see if anybody else go pop up in the chat, but I think we're gonna get right into it sooner than later because this is gonna be a very interesting topic. I mean, shit, y'all see the title of the live stream. You know what it is. I'm just letting the people know in the broadcast channel. Make sure you follow the Instagram page at the 1430 podcast on IG or on Facebook. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you are watching this on YouTube, and make sure you follow me on Twitch if you you're watching me on Twitch. Matter of fact, do both. Do both. If you got a Twitch and a YouTube account, I gotta fix that. If you got a Twitch and a YouTube account, man, just follow me on both. You know what I'm saying? Why not? Why not? It's free. Yeah, man, I'm gonna be real. This one, I think I've put a little bit more time into preparing than like a lot of my especially my most recent stuff. Like a lot of times I like to kind of just go off the cuff, but I felt like this one had a little bit more gravity to it, so I decided to really get into my journalistic bag to make sure that like I really get my point across on why I say streaming has killed music. So I'd probably give it to like 8:05 just to see if anybody else gonna pop up, and then we're gonna get right into it. Yeah, man. If you watching this, like if you in the chat, just let me know. Like what streaming service, if if you use a streaming service, what streaming service do you primarily like consume music with? Like I purposely subscribed to Tidal because when I looked at the lay of it, like it seemed like Tidal was the one that paid the most. At least at the time when I got my subscription. I don't know if it's still the same because I know that they've been, I think they've been sold off recently. So I think it might be different. I don't know, depending on who owns it and what policies they got going on. Yeah, I had a show last night. Shout out to my boy Eddie Low and Low High Entertainment. I was about to call him Lo-Fi. Low High Entertainment. They put on a really great show with School Kids Records in Raleigh. I was one of the performers. I didn't get no footage of that performance, and that hurt because I felt like that was one of my best ones. Like if you follow me on IG, on my personal IG at Vinny Dangerous, all one word. I'll probably put it in the description of this live stream too. But it's VINNIE Dangerous, all one word. And it's consistent across any platform except for X. I don't do X. But yeah, like I didn't get. I've been in the gym just I like at least 3 times a week for like almost a whole year. There's been a couple weeks or a couple times I had to skip either because of illness or my schedule maybe got hectic, at the last second or something like that. Um, but for the most part, I've been consistent, and I really feel a difference in how I perform and my breathing and stuff like that. Like I'm big on the treadmill, and I felt like that was one of my best performances in a long time. And I hate that I ain't get no performance footage. But other than that, like it was a great time. I put on the Dead Presidents, uh, face paint like I did for the intro video, like back in 2021. Brought that back so I could perform some God Made a Monster stuff. I could feel like it was close to Halloween. God Made a Monster. Just felt like it fit. But all right, let's get into it. Let's get into it before I get too much rambling. Yeah. So the title of this live stream is How Streaming Killed Music. Now, and there's been a lot of conversation about Spotify in particular, who kind of kicked off this whole like music streaming thing. And all these other platforms popped up: Tidal, Apple Music, Deezer, YouTube got into it with YouTube Music, Amazon Music. The list goes on and on. Like there's so many streaming services. Just like with movies and television, like Netflix was first, and then Hulu. Now it's Peacock, HBO Max. What else? Amazon Prime. Like Apple has their own streaming service. It's get to the point where it was supposed to be an alternative to the cost of cable, and you would be able to like just kind of curate and watch the stuff that you wanted to watch, and not have to deal with ads and shit like that. And then eventually, it just became the same as cable. You add up all the streaming services to make sure you watch all the shit that you want to watch, because some of the stuff is locked over here, like on Peacock. If I want to watch this show, I have to get Peacock. If I want to watch this show, if I'm really into this show, I gotta get Hulu. And then I gotta get HBO Max, and I might have to get Prime, and all these other ones. And then bam, like now you add up the cost of everything. It's just as expensive as cable used to be. And then just like with the music industry, it's been kind of like that too. Is where it was supposed to be an answer to physical media, and because of, just kind of like the industry was tanking. And like people were not, a lot of it had to do with the recession, but a lot of people just wasn't investing in the music because of piracy, because of some other things we're gonna get into in a minute that were a lot like big contributing factors of why like people were so willing to embrace streaming, just from an artist standpoint, an industry standpoint, and for a consumer standpoint. It was just way more convenient instead of going to Target, going to Walmart, ordering a CD from Amazon, paying 10, 12, 16, 20 if it's a double disc. Every time some new shit drop, you could just pay a monthly fee and you can stream as much music as you want. And depending on the tier you're on, you might get some extra perks, like make it higher quality resolutions, which, I'm gonna be real, I don't really know like too many common people that would really give a fuck about like having the highest quality of a song. Like as long as it don't sound like shit, I think I'm gonna be alright, listening to like just as a listener. Like as an artist, like I understand the differences and shit like that, and I really like have an ear for it. But as a music fan, like if I wasn't doing music and I was just a fan of music, like I really wouldn't give a fuck if it was an MP3 or a Wave or what is it? This FLACC. I don't use that one as much. I use a Wave file, of course. But like I wouldn't care about having the highest quality of music, the highest resolution. I just want to hear a song. Like sometimes niggas blow up off of shit that they recorded in their room that sound like it was recorded in their room, but people just really fuck with it. Whether they fuck with the artist or they fuck with the music or whatever is going on with the music, right? So, but that was basically Spotify, and then other streaming platforms follow suit, and then streaming became the industry standard. Well, this week, Spotify. Well, it would have been last week by the time you're seeing this. Last week, Spotify decided to announce some changes that we're making to their royalty program. Let me pull out this article real quick. Like I said, I got into my journalistic bag. I wanted to make sure I got sources, and I really did my research on this before coming to y'all. So there's big changes are coming. Oh, this is The Verge, by the way. But I've read a few articles already. So one of the things that they talk about in here is the biggest thing that everybody's talking about, and like the changes that they're making, is that they're basically setting a threshold on what they're willing to monetize. So if your song isn't getting at least making, like, what's the number again? I had it written down. Okay, yeah, 5 cents per month. Now, Spotify already doesn't pay artists, like it pays them a fraction. Like the last time I looked it up, it was between 0.003 cents and 0.005 cents per stream. The last time I checked it, right? Which people have been complaining about that for years. And it's one of those things where I've joined the conversation, I've talked about it, but the way streaming is as a business model didn't make a lot of sense to me, even when I really looked into it. All I could think about is like, if people are paying just $10 a month. I know Spotify at one point was less than $10. I think it was like $7 a month for like their lowest paid tier. They also have a free tier. that you can listen to, but you listen to it with ads and shit. So when people were asking for how like getting more money per stream, and Spotify pay basically like how it works is that they will, if you play a song for at least 30 seconds, it's counted as a play. So I could play the song for 30 seconds and decide I don't want to hear it anymore and turn it off, but they still get that 0.003 or 0.005 cents of a stream. Like they still make their money. And so that was always the thing. So in my head, I'm like, I don't understand kind of where, as far as because you're not selling it. It's basically we're leasing the music when we're streaming. We're not actually, like, we don't own this music. If you're a subscription, that's probably as part of why I have a problem with the subscription model in general. Like as a music producer, I don't like the idea of paying subscriptions for like plugins and stuff like that. I'd rather own it, because the minute, like, let's say your credit card declines. Like I actually had this situation happen to me not so long ago, where like my credit card had expired, and you have bills and stuff set to auto draft, like for the money to automatically come out of your account, like when the bill is set. And anytime my card, I get a new card, or my card expires and I get another one, I have to switch it out. Like I always try to like, map out, try to figure out who I need to update this information with. And I did it for all of my bills except for one. And some people, some companies, depending on what it is, will hit you with their email or call you and go, hey man, you missed it. This is, we need you to pay this, or you're going to get hit with a fee, whoop-de whoop. And then some of them, like this particular, utility, they just decided to start fucking with your shit. Like you miss one day and they already like cutting shit off, or like, like they put you basically in a position where you have to kind of climb your way back up. They already done hit you with the fee, and times is hard enough as it is. I don't need extra fees and shit. So it's like that one missed payment, that one day where it just slipped my mind that I didn't update my info with them. I was, shit out of luck for a little bit until I was able to like update it with them, make the payment, and then we were good. Yeah, and with utilities and shit like that, that's one thing. But like with something that I would much preferably like to own, like music, or like what I was talking about with music production, like a plug-in, or some type of instrument, some virtual instrument or something like that. Like I wouldn't want to like pay monthly for that, because the minute I miss a payment, that shit is gone until I get my payments back up. And as a musician, as a music artist, you don't know how frequent your revenue stream is going to be. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. Sometimes you're not making anything off your music for a while. And, you already have a 9-to-5 to just keep you alive. And they already underpaying us on a normal day-to-day, 9-to-5 jobs, a lot of people's careers. There are a lot of people underpaid, because there's a lot of people at the top overpaid. So we're already, and with inflation and shit like that, we're already in a position where we're behind the 8 ball, just keeping the lights on. So to have extra revenue, or to basically like fund this other part of your business on your own until revenue starts to come in, you really can't be in a position where me trying to be productive and make shit happen is, tied to this payment plan. I don't like that. I'd rather pay a one-time fee. I don't care if it's $100. I'd rather pay that than to be paying you monthly, and then if for one reason or another shit stops, and now all of a sudden like I can't produce the way I want to. Or in the case of streaming, I would rather be able to listen to my music regardless of whether you got your $10 or not, or your $15. And the way that like both for movies, TV, and music, they're raising the prices all the time. So at certain points, considering the state of the economy, like I might have to turn some of this shit off. But now I'm shit out of luck when it comes to certain shows and things that I'm attached to. So that's one of the disadvantages of this streaming shit. So for Spotify to do what they're planning on doing is pretty fucked up. Cause like I said, the music industry adopted this as a standard, like back in like 2014. Like I found this chart that I thought was really helpful to kind of illustrate the issue here. Yeah, it's the downside of having all these damn tabs open because I can't remember. Oh, okay. I can't remember exactly which one had what. Yeah, let me see. All right. So you can kind of see a correlation with Spotify's like growth, like right around the time when the music industry as a whole was on a decline. Because you got, in the green is the physical, blue is downloads and other digital stuff, like excluding streaming. There's, whatever the other is that it falls under, and streaming. And it was right around like 2014, 2015, things really started to shift towards like streaming as a whole. People weren't buying physical media because of like piracy, albums leaking all the time. Like there were a lot of sites that had full albums already loaded to them on the day that somebody's album released, especially a bigger artist. Like, Kanye drops an album. I remember the full Yeezus album being available for free download the very second that the clock went from 11:59 p.m. to 12 a.m. the next day, like that day that the album was supposed to release. The album was already there. And I listened to it. I still bought the album because I was still a fan. But at the time, it was just like you kind of wanted to sample what was going on, like going on with the album. Was it worth me going to the record store and buying this album? Was it worth putting in the time? Because people talk about it all the time, especially like, the conversation of, can you really compare artists in the streaming era versus like pre-streaming? Like Drake just, tied Michael Jackson for the most number ones, or like I think it was like third place or whatever, but like he tied Michael Jackson standing in that for having as many number ones as him, number one records. And a lot of people made the argument that you really can't compare him and Michael because Michael grew up where Michael came up in a time where you had to like make the effort to go get physical media. You had to go out and actually buy the records instead of just waking up on a Friday morning and streaming it as soon as it dropped. Well, for one, and as much shit I've been talking about Drake the last couple live streams, I'll cut him some slack. I mean, Drake is a pre-streaming artist. He did start racking up number ones and things like that before streaming existed. So I don't want to completely dismiss his accomplishment because like maybe half of them might have been due to just streaming. But the dude was around way before streaming was as prevalent as it is now. So I don't want to take that away from him. But it is kind of a weird gray area when it comes to like trying to measure accomplishments against like people from the past, because it is kind of easier to rise up the ranks and like match those records that stood for decades because of how convenient streaming is. But in that same vein, like I can see where because it's kind of a double-edged sword. Like as a music artist that started doing music pre-streaming and like watching the change, like it is more convenient for the listener, but in like I guess the flip side would be that because it's so easy to get on streaming platforms, you're fighting for attention, you're fighting for space. Like there's so many artists that are on Spotify and all these other streaming platforms all over, and you're not only competing with those streaming platforms, you're also competing with stuff like YouTube or social media or them free sites like SoundCloud or AudioMac or Reverb, like Reverb Nation. I mean, like there's a lot of sites that you can listen to music for free, upload music for free, and there are a lot of people that are getting that attention over there. So you're fighting to get people to one platform or to whatever platform, and you're also fighting with so many different artists. Like every artist couldn't be in a record store, but now everybody and their mother could have an album on Spotify right next to the biggest artist in the world. But at the same time, the biggest artist in the world is definitely going to command a lot more attention than your first album release, and you barely have 500 followers on Instagram or Facebook or whatever. So, and I'm gonna come back to this chart in a second, but you can kind of see like how Spotify got this stronghold. The music industry was hurting because of piracy. Fans were having a hard time like justifying spending the money and spending the time and the effort to go out and buy these records when because they didn't have a lot of disposable income, and it was really hard to like trust maybe like the singles, or maybe you got burnt by an artist. The album came out and it was pretty trash. Like I remember saying for a long time, like I would listen to an album and then it was always a bad sign when the first two songs on the album, like when you look at the track list, was the songs that you had already heard, the singles that were put out beforehand. And then you're like, man, the rest of the album is going to be shit. And it would be shit. So consumer trust was down in the artists. Piracy was at an all-time high. And, so consumers and artists and the industry as a whole were suffering. Spotify seemed like a good, like streaming as the next evolution of music, felt like the most tenable thing. But I think, stuff like the convenience of streaming, as well as like the convenience of streaming for the consumer and these low payouts are like all contributed to a lot of the problems that I've been speaking about on the pod for a minute. Because I'm talking about the whole revenue stream. So they have a threshold, right? Where now you have to make at least 5 cents. So that adds up to about 200 streams a year. Doesn't seem like a lot. And I actually posted about this on Facebook. Like when I found out about it, like the Instagram, or I think it was the X page. Well, somebody posted it on Instagram. Actually, it was DIY Curtis King. He had posted about it, and I shared it myself. They gave my thoughts. I basically said that like Spotify basically just told you if you're not pulling in big numbers, then it's a waste of time. It's a waste of time to even get on these platforms and try to like push your shit. And there were a few people that commented. It was like, well, it's not, like because of 5 cents or like 200 plays a year doesn't really seem like that big of an ask, right? But when you read a little bit deeper into it, So they're demonetizing or basically saying that you're not gonna make any money off of these records if you don't meet these thresholds. If you don't hit those numbers every month, then your song is not gonna make even that little fraction of what they're paying artists. You're not gonna get that back. So where does that money go? Because those streams are generated because of, like, it's kind of like divided by their subscribers. Spotify in particular has about 600 million people paid have like paid subscribers. Like they have 600 million paid subscribers on their platform. So that's basically kind of like dividing that up because that's monthly. Like I think currently now their lowest tier is like $10 a month. So that's 600 million people, around 600 million people times 10. And you're getting that every month. That's the kind of money that Spotify is generating. Like I looked up how much they, just pulled in, and in 2023 alone, they are making, like they hit like 1.314 billion dollars in revenue. And that's not even counting the rest of the year. They still have time to make bank for Christmas and shit. So it's like that's not even the final count. And so that's the kind of number that they're pulling in. And then you have ad revenue, and you also have the revenue from sponsorships and things like that. Like there's a lot of money coming to Spotify, so it's supposed to be divided up amongst the artists that gets plays, and they came up with that number, and I wondered how much of that annual revenue is kind of like the final number, or like the percentage that they give to artists. And I read somewhere where it says 70-30, where they keep 70%, artists as a whole gets the 30% of the pie. But that number is even disputed. Because when you look at the calculator, right? You look at the calculator of kind of like how the model is set up right now. Now, assuming that you own 100% of your royalties, right? Like I pulled up this calculator. Now, I'm just want to focus on Spotify because they're the one making these changes. In US dollars, if you got 1 million streams, that's only $3,480, right? Now that would go in your pocket if you basically did everything. So you don't have any features that you have to pay for, whether upfront or whatever the splits would be in this case. Producers still gonna get paid. Any marketing, any engineering like mixing and mastering, which especially if you have a full project, they can get really expensive. Like there's a lot of costs. There's like merchandise, whatever money you might have invested in like a music video or a photo shoot, like really that is somebody's just marketing budget. And that's not even counting anything outside of that, like merch and shit like that. And then you can make money with shows, but the unfortunate truth is shows are down. There's a lot of artists that are not even like selling out tours, and a lot of them are having to cancel tour dates because tickets are not up. So if the revenue is not coming in through the shows and they're not coming through the music because of the streaming model, then what do we got? Now, a big thing about this too is that like this really hurts the independent artist. Cause like I said, like unless you have like a really big backing, like or you just have like this humongous fan base, like you're not gonna see any of your bread. And that 1.3 $3.14 billion in revenue just in 2023 alone. Like, let's say if I only make 4 cents a month instead of 5 cents a month, like I get that close to hitting the threshold, but I don't get it. That money goes right back into Spotify's pockets. Like, I think they said it goes into their if I'm reading it right, it goes back into the pool, like some kind of pool that they have. Like, I mean, and I may be wrong about this, but when I read that, that just sounds like it goes back into their pocket. So I could be generating this. I'd be generating whatever money I do. I can get passive plays. Like, I put out a song back in June, "Found My Way." It still gets like, I go up there and check every once in a while. I don't really check as often as I used to, but I go up there. It gets at least 10, 20 plays a day, right? And that might be enough to meet the threshold, but let's say if I only got like 2 plays a day, or like maybe a play a day, right? That, even though it's nothing, like financially, it's not gonna really make or break me, but it's still my money that my music is generating. Even if it is that little like fraction of a penny, I should still get that. But they're taking that away, and that little bit could be the difference between. That could really make a difference for a certain artist, and I'm not gonna get that. And one of the things, like, I was watching this video about something hit the keys. I always fuck his name up. He's one of my favorite like producer content creators on YouTube. So if y'all haven't heard of him, check him out, because he always looking out with deals and free plugins and things like that. But he spoke about this situation with Spotify, and he talked about how. Damn, I missed my point. I forgot my point. Shit. Yeah, man. I actually went into this thinking I was gonna be prepared, and I'm actually fucking up a little bit more. Well, okay, so I'll link his video, because he really broke it down to a T. But it's basically like how unfair this is. Like, oh, okay, that's the point I was about to make. It's because for us, like, you look at it from like an individual artist standpoint, that little bit of money ain't really doing too much. It's kind of more of a principle thing at that point. It's not about like whether or not it's gonna like make me as like I'm not gonna feed my family off of the little bit of shit that I get from Spotify, but it's more of a principle thing. Like, I earn that. Like, I'm probably putting the time, whether in the creation portion, the marketing portion, doing shows, like whatever it is, like, I put in the time and effort to get that little fraction of a penny. You shouldn't just be pocketing that. But all right, my little fraction of a penny, but you multiply that by how many artists. And there's like if the statistic says it's like 80% of artists like barely have like 100 monthly listeners or something like that, but they're still generating some kind of revenue. Like, you add that up by like all the artists that are and there's thousands of artists that are uploading music or sound effects. Like, it's a bunch of different stuff that gets uploaded to Spotify every day. Like, just add all of those, the fraction of a penny for like these thousands of artists. Yo, that could potentially be thousands, even millions of dollars that are just being pocketed by Spotify. And it's just exposure for us. Like, at the very least, like, I am one of the few people that I spoke to. And I spoke to a few people at the show last night. And I asked them, like, how often do you really look for new artists on, whatever streaming service they listen to. And barely any of them do. They have artists that they follow. They have, of course, the mainstream artists when they drop, and the marketing everywhere, and they're curious about it, or they got other independent friend, music homies. But like, just to pick a random album or song or whatever and just listen to it, like, there's not a lot of people that do that. So I don't even know if you can really count it exposure. It's just really free money for Spotify at that point. And one of the things that, like, because the more I think about it, right, like, because it's deeper than this. This is kind of like the thing that kind of sparked my brain to kind of keep moving. Because, like, I can't just think about it on face value. Like, I'm thinking about it, like, overall. Because, like I said, this has been a conversation about Spotify and the streaming model in general that a lot of people have just not really fuck with. Like, so a couple weeks ago, Drake dropped his album. Everybody was so disappointed, and they were so upset about how low effort it sounded. And just kind of like hip hop in particular, but just music in general just feels like low energy, uninspired. Like, people, like, it's like most of the music, like, you see all these older artists, these superstars from a past generation, like, they're still selling out tours. Like 50 Cent selling out tours. Like, there's all these hip hop 50 shows that are going around, and like, all of these people are selling out. Like, I just saw something. Lauryn Hill just broke the record for like the highest grossing show from a female rapper, and she's doing this off one album. Like, she got, she did the stuff with the Fugees, but as a solo artist, she's been doing this off of one album. Even with all of the controversies and stuff, about her, like, not showing up to shows and things like that, or showing up mad late to shows and shit, people still pull up for her because of the quality of the music that one album and her Fugees work, but really that one album was able to generate. And then people want, and I just spoke about it, like, there are like all these reports of all these new artists who are trying to book arena tours or trying to book like, I don't know about stadium tours, but like trying to book these big tours because of how their Spotify and streaming numbers is going. But like, they're having to cancel all these shows because of low ticket sales. Like, people are not pulling up for these newer artists. And like I said with the chart, like, I'm gonna pull that back up. One of the funny things, like, you can kind of see where Spotify's influence came in. And one of the things that I'm noticing, like, around 2014, 2015 is when, like, Spotify became the standard. Streaming became the standard, like the industry standard with music. And I feel like that's where, the whole idea of, like, where are the superstars? Like, when you think about the biggest artists, the people that, like, are revered still, like a Beyonce, a Kendrick Lamar, a Drake, like, 50 Cent is selling out tours and shit. Like, the reason why, like, these were all pre-streaming. These are all pre-digital download artists for the most part. There's a certain level of value that comes from being an artist that people are willing to, on their lunch breaks, or go out in the rain on a Friday or Tuesday, how it used to be. Like, there's a certain level of value that comes with, like, I'm putting in an effort to listen to this person's music. And at the same time, knowing the return on investment for artists is a lot bigger when they were selling physical media, or even, like, selling like MP3s and shit on the Apple Store, versus the little bit of revenue you get from streaming. There was a little bit more of an incentive to put an effort into the music. Like, as an artist, all the time, all I hear is, like, in the music business, music is like the very last thing. It's like the least important thing. And I've always hated that, because as true as it is, like the whole reason why we got into this shit was to do music. The whole reason why we got into this shit was because well, at least for me and like artists that I fuck with, like they got into this because they wanted to do music. Yeah, they wanted to get paid. They watched like Jay-Z in the Big Pimpin' video, or they saw Cameron in the Hey Ma video with the Jag and shit, or they saw everything that Jada and Styles was doing in the We Gon' Make It video, and they wanted to emulate that. So yeah, I still want to get paid, especially if I'm coming from nothing. I really want to get paid and I want to do it through music, but I still loved doing music. And people are willing to put in that time and that effort and that energy into something that they feel like I'm going to get a return on that. Like people shit, or not shit, but like people have been begging for people like Frank Ocean and Rihanna and like Kendrick Lamar before he dropped Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. People are like clamoring for these artists to come out and drop music. And Rihanna in particular, I can understand why. Like if she never put out another album again, I completely understand. Like she has all of her other businesses that has made her a billionaire and has made her very successful, and she's obviously passionate about it. For like anybody with two eyes can see that she's obviously passionate about the things that she's done with Fenty, and like she's putting all that work and that energy and time into something that is actually being appreciated and valued, and there's a real return on investment. Like you're not going to get that with music. And she is another like pre-streaming artist that probably saw a lot of return on investment for her music like early on, and then as streaming became the standard, because 2014 2015 is when like streaming really took over like physical media as like the dominant force in the music industry. And her last album came out in 2016. I don't know if that is the reason, but if that is the reason, I could completely understand. There are a lot of artists that basically dropped out and started doing podcasts. Like we talked about Drake, like, Joe Budden's career kind of like, came back into the limelight. And, because the conversation, and I being somebody that was a fan and was influenced by Joe Budden's music, I just kind of went back and like checked out some of his stuff. And on his last album, Rage in the Machine, there was a lot of talk about how, I'm more or less getting out of this because I don't like the way the industry is going with how streaming is. Like every Friday, and I guess I'm part of the problem, but I also like to consume a lot of music. I'm very interested just to see what, new shit comes out. Like I will discover a new artist because I really fuck with the album art. That's always been my first like metric on how I decide on what I'm gonna listen to. Other than, the shit that I'm already anticipating. I might check out a few different releases just because I like the title and I like the album art. And so I like to consume a lot of music. So streaming is pretty convenient for me. But, like to listen to a lot of these artists, I don't really hear the same passion. Like, Ashley is another example. I didn't listen to this album, but the City Girls just dropped a new album not too long ago. And, people were clowning them because the sales projections was going to be like 20, or like not even 20, like 6 to 8K. Now for big stars like the City Girls, like that seems like really low. And they've talked about it. They talked about it on the interview with the Breakfast Club, and they talked about how it was like poor management, poor promotion, and stuff like that. But in all honesty, it doesn't even matter. Like their careers are not going to be affected by like low album sales. Honestly, they're to the point where they're establishing themselves as, just personalities. Like, Young Miami got the Carisha Please show. She got everything she got going on with Diddy. They got like probably mad like, you know, influencer deals like with their stuff on Instagram, promoting stuff on their social media platforms. Like they have a lot of other shit going on. That's kind of the business model now. Like I said, like now I've listened to people tell me all the time. Like I said before, they were telling me all the time that music is like the least important thing when it comes to the music industry, the music business. Or now that mentality has morphed to the point where, artists like the City Girls, who, I'm not as familiar with their story, but they don't really seem that passionate about the music. I see them passionate about everything else, as like who they are as a brand, as their image, than whatever music they put out. And I feel like that's the mentality of a lot of artists. So when you are complaining about like how music feels like this and it don't feel like that, like it don't feel like how it used to back in the day, and it's not just old man yelling at cloud, because I peeped this shit when I was, in high school. You kind of started to see the demand for quality go down for multiple reasons, but it was really because like people were more invested on who you are as a person and not necessarily who you were as an artist. And that has its pros and its cons, but now it's to the point where people are just kind of more influencers that just so happen to make music. Like I am putting out music not because I'm passionate about it, and there are some exceptions, of course. There are definitely like artists still out there that are making music, but especially in the mainstream, it just feels like I am just an influencer that just happens to make music, and I am just putting out music to say that I am a musician because that is part of my brand. That's not necessarily who I am. That's not necessarily my priority. It's just part of the overall image of who I am and who I'm portraying. I could see a lot of like artists now, like they could put out a couple records, get themselves established, and then just completely leave that shit alone and like do podcast or, hosting gigs or modeling or just, start all these different businesses and things like that. And like there's really no incentive to make good music. And as a consumer, that shit sucks. Because now all of the music seems so low effort, like, and with the convenience of streaming, I could just play it one time, give it a passing, not even like whack, just background noise, and just walk away from it and never think about it again. I was actually going through my phone, like going through like the songs, the albums that I've downloaded like over the year, like the past year, and cleaning out some of the stuff because I'm like, damn, I forgot about this. I don't listen to this. I downloaded it because I was curious. I listened to it. It's whatever. And because of the streaming, because this is another influence of streaming, right? Because of how streaming is set up with playlisting, playlist promotion, and stuff like that, there's no real incentive to sound like anything, like sound original. Like I feel like my philosophy when it comes to being an artist, like, yes, you got to learn your fundamentals, but there's really no rules outside of that. Like you got to know how to craft. Like I don't like this idea of not knowing music theory, not knowing like just the basics of what makes a good song, like when it comes to frequencies and things like that. Like I understand that, but outside of like a foundation, you could build whatever house you want to, or whatever building you want, but you still need a foundation. Like you still need certain materials, you still need to follow a certain rule book to make sure that it stays upright. But at the end of the day, like after that is handled, you can do whatever you want. The only other rule besides the fundamentals though is that it has to be something that, like, for it to be real, like a real true expression of who you are, it has to have a certain level of individuality to it. And I felt like before streaming, that was always, I mean, let's be honest. It was always clones. It was always people imitating whatever the new hot trend was. Like Elvis is popping, we're gonna have a bunch of Elvis clones. The Beatles is popping, we're gonna get a bunch of Beatles clones. Like when it comes to rap, like Jay-Z's popping, we're gonna have a bunch of Jay-Z clones. Kanye's popping, everybody's jumping on soul samples and shit. And it goes on and on and on. You see biggest artists, there's probably 15 clones that probably come after them. Or not even just the artist, but like auto-tune. Auto-tune was hot. And all of this stuff predates streaming. But now I think it's worse, and people have pointed it out all the time. Like because even with those clones, to a certain level, I could kind of like distinguish who they were. Like whether it was the tone of their voice, whether it was their subject matter, maybe it's the production. It's something about them, even though they're clearly ripping off like whatever the hot new trend is. There's still a certain level of I know who that is when I hear them. Now I can listen to a new song come out and it's like a mainstream, trendy track or whatever, and I could have 3 different artists name in my head on who I think it is, and I'm wrong because it's a 4th guy that sounds just like all 3 of them, but he's new. That's the only thing. And you see, but like that's kind of the culture of like streaming because of how playlisting is. Playlisting is basically like we're trying to set a mood. We're trying to curate something that like kind of fits a certain vibe that we're going for. And on paper, there's nothing wrong with that. I think the issue is because of it being like this big way of promoting people. Like it's like now, outside of like social media and like Google ad space or whatever, like the other ways of like promoting people and shit. One of the biggest things I see a lot of like services and stuff like that try to promote themselves on, whether fake or legitimate, is playlists. But now like sites like Submit Hub or Playlist Push or something like that will reject you if you sound similar, but you don't sound similar enough to what this playlist is. And then the playlist is just a bunch of the same sounding artists. Like you have to sound nearly identical to even be accepted by a lot of these playlists. And if you don't have like a box to fit in, there's probably not a playlist for you. Not one that is getting like the monthly listeners for it to really make a difference. Like, and I used to think that there was just these individual playlists that, like somebody maybe, build up a following or something like that, and they have a lot of monthly listeners, but it's run by them. Like it's still a individual or maybe even an independent company outside of Spotify that, that's put it together. But sometimes it could be their editorial, like Spotify's editorial playlists are like this, where it's just a bunch of popular artists and a bunch of artists that sound like these popular artists, but there's not a lot of room for people to be, like individuals. So when you complain about music sounding the same, sounding nearly identical, it's because it's not just, I'm an independent artist and I'm trying to make a name for myself. And like, this person's hot, let me just imitate what they're doing. Nah, man, it's deeper than that. Because now you're being rejected for not sounding like exactly like this person or exactly like this artist. Because at the end of the day, a lot of this stuff is put together by an algorithm that is put together. So it's like, what is more likely to get people's attention, to get them to listen to this. But it's also like down to just personal taste. And if I'm an artist or if I'm a curator that likes a particular artist and I like a particular sound, I'm gonna put that together. And if they have enough power and influence on the industry, it will make it to where everyone will have to like shift to this person's personal taste. You have like a couple people that are dictating the listening habits and the creation of a lot of music across the board. And like I feel like streaming really had a big hand in that because of how it's way more focused on less on the artist, less on the consumer, and more about like data and numbers. Data, like numbers, has always been like a big annoyance for me when it comes to art. Like, we're never in competition with each other. This isn't like sports where you can like pull up Michael Jordan stats and LeBron stats, you know, like the points scored or how many championships they got. And you can have these debates and you can make legitimate points based on the numbers, the facts. I don't really feel like you could do that with art. Like when you know, like that's why I don't like having the GOAT conversations, because you can have this argument with somebody, and for one, there's no set standard on like what makes the best artist, best music, best rapper, best singer. Like there's no real way to decide that. It's all subjective, but also like you can't really bring numbers into that conversation, and that's what a lot of people do to justify. Oh, well, like Jay-Z's the greatest rapper, or Lil Wayne's the greatest rapper, or Drake's the greatest rapper, because hey, look at how successful this person is. But they also have like millions of dollars being pumped into them by the machine or whatever label that they're associated with. They have a whole team behind them. Like if I say independent or underground rapper, you know, B, like if I was to try to tell you that I think JPEG Mafia is one of the greatest rappers ever, and for one, there might be a lot of people that just don't know who that is, but then they're gonna like dispute it because they're not like as well known and they haven't sold as many records as this rapper over here, or like whoever the top selling artist is at that moment in time. That's never been a thing, but like because of how Spotify is structured or streaming is structured, and because of it now being the industry standard, that's really all you can focus on. Now, one of the things that Spotify is cracking down on, like with some of these new policies they're doing, that I actually agree with, is them cracking down on bot streams or, you know, fraudulent stuff. And like before I get into that, I just wanted to like, cause I had a conversation about this last night, and I had to bring it up. I've never understood, because you see it all the time. There are a lot of people who say they can help you, right, as an artist, especially when it comes to like rappers. I don't know if they do this with singers or not, like, or other genres, but I know in hip hop it's very prevalent. There's a lot of people who will try to market themselves like, I can be your marketing person, I can be your PR person. But if I don't like you and I don't want to work with you if your whole business model is to constantly talk shit about your customer base. Like, I don't really think that Walmart is where Walmart is because they decided to spend thousands and millions of dollars on advertisement just telling you how stupid you are if you don't spend money with them. I don't think Amazon would be where it is if they just told you you're dumb if you go to the store and buy whatever it was that you were looking to buy, whether it was a phone charger or a PlayStation 5 or whatever. I don't know. Like, you're stupid for buying it from the store than if you were to just buy it online. And I feel like that's what a lot of these people do. They talk shit about how you have money for this, you have money for weed, you have money for bottles at the club, but you don't have money for music promotion. You spend money on a music video and a photo shoot, but you don't have money for music promotion. And so that's already like I already have a bad taste in my mouth with that. But the problem is that it's your job as the business to convince me that what you're selling is of actual value. There's a lot of people that can fake streams. That's why, like, again, the numbers conversation does not work when you talk about who is the best, who is at the top of the game, all this other stuff, because there's a lot of people, we know about streaming farms where people set up like phones or, tablets or whatever, like in a warehouse, just playing songs over and over again to like set new records and like sell millions of records. The labels, major labels do that. So I know that it's out there and I know that it's a real thing. So how am I supposed to know that if I spend the money with you that I'm actually going to get anything of value from you? Because I could get thousands of plays, millions of plays fraudulently on Spotify or whatever streaming services that you're marketing to me, and it don't mean a damn thing. How crazy does it look that I have like 100,000 monthly listeners on Spotify, but I can't I can't get at least 4 people to show up to my little show in Raleigh, North Carolina, or in Durham, North Carolina, where it's right up the street. I got, like, going by my numbers, I have thousands of people listening to me, but I don't have 4 or 5 people willing to spend the ticket to see me live. So it's just my little rant. It just irritates the fuck out of me when people do that. But yeah, like, because of the nature of numbers and things like that, like, it just becomes more prevalent of what people focus on instead of making the music. So it just becomes more about marketing yourself as a personality than to actually that actually like really care about making a digestible product that people latch onto. Like, but I really do like that they are cracking down on bot streams. But again, like, when I learned that major labels own like 18% of Spotify, so these new policies that they're rolling out aren't really gonna affect them. And I really feel like the whole bot streams, even though I think it's whack for an independent artist to do, I really don't think that's gonna stop the streaming farms for major labels, because that would be going up against their own interests. So I don't really feel like that's gonna. So those fraudulent streams for your major labels are gonna be unaffected. It's just really the independent artists. That's why I say, like, this is an attack on independent artists, and it really sucks and it's really disheartening because these changes at Spotify come so close to the news of Bandcamp, which was like the last like real safe haven, or kind of a safe haven for independent artists to be able to sell music. And especially with them doing like the Bandcamp Fridays and things like that, where people got to keep like a large portion or all of their money for sales that were sold on Friday, the first Friday in a month. Like, it just felt like they were artists first, but now they've been sold to Songtradr, and they fired like a bunch of people after saying they wasn't going to lay off a bunch of people, especially the editorial staff, especially because they're going after people allegedly that were, a part of a union that was forming amongst the Bandcamp staff. and it's just kind of it's kind of make you wonder like about things to come. So with Bandcamp kind of in this very like, you know, very unsure but not looking so good, you know, space, and then Spotify rolling this out, fucking over artists more than they already are. Like, it's really disheartening as an artist. Like, I'm working on this new album now, and it really just it's kind of throwing my whole, you know, idea of how I wanted to do this into disarray. Now, people been telling me for a long time, and I ain't gonna lie, I've been very hard headed, and I think a lot of it is our fault. Like, I will own that, because Spotify's been getting away with, and streaming in general has been getting away with highway robbery for a long time, and not just in the music space. Like, the actors and the writers were on strike this year. The writers was able to come up with a deal, but you know, actors are still, at the time of this live stream, are still on strike, and are still you know, fighting to make sure that, you know, amongst other things, AI and fair pay is, you know, given to them, especially when it comes to, you know, streaming, you know, residual payments and things like that for, you know, reruns of shows and things like that. But the problem was already there, and it was only getting worse. And with the introduction of AI, it was like, all right, it was too much. Spotify really should have been dealt with a long time ago. And a lot of artists have tried to fight it. I know there was the whole like exclusive album deal thing. A lot of, you know, when Tidal came out, there were certain albums where you can only get Beyonce and Jay-Z music if you got Tidal. And Kanye even exclusively dropped Life of Pablo on Tidal. Well, that didn't work, obviously, because eventually all of their music ended up on those streaming sites anyway. Even Prince, in death, did not want his music on streaming platforms, but it ended up on streaming platforms. You know, it's really hard to fight it, because it just became the industry standard. And I really don't understand why Spotify is still the industry standard. Well, I get it, because Universal and Warner Bros. Music and all these other big, like the biggest record labels, have a major stock in Spotify. So of course they're gonna gear everybody to prop up this platform. But, you know, just knowing the behind the scenes, knowing that they pay out less than any of the other streaming services besides a couple, I don't understand why they're still the industry standard. But it's just kind of where things are, and I don't think we should have let it get to this point. Like right now, until further notice, like I still plan on putting my project out on Bandcamp, like my next LP. And I do plan on like doing some direct consumer stuff, but I don't know if I can even fool with the streaming stuff. I feel like it's to the point where now we really just have to be like, we really have to reject it, and we really have to take a stand to like get things to change. Like I talked about the, you know, plug-in subscription services, right? Well, earlier this year, Waves, which is a you know, for people that don't know, is a music software company that does a lot of like, you know, highly sought after plugins and stuff like that for music making and mixing and things like that. They recently got into a lot of hot water because they tried to like shift everybody overnight to strictly subscription based with their stuff, and a lot of people fought that. Like there were a lot of people online, like especially in the YouTube spaces where I saw a lot of it. A lot of people were like, you know, putting together like lists. Like they were just like, we're done with Waves, we're not working with them. They were like encouraging everybody to like get rid of their stuff. There was even a Reddit thread, or it was like a Excel sheet that was put together and posted on Reddit of, like, just they listed all of the like Waves plugins, and then had alternatives of what you could get. Like, oh, we're rejecting this. You can still do what you do, and then there was some free options, some other paid options. But the whole thing was, we're not fucking with Waves because of how they try to do us like that. And then within a couple weeks, they had to change course. And I know Spotify is a bigger beast altogether. But I think we just need to reject the idea of this industry standard. Like, as consumers, as artists, major or independent. Because think about it like this. This whole threshold thing isn't just an attack on independent artists. Think of like established artists that have like long catalogs. Like, think of somebody like ED40 or Tech Nine or Too Short. Like, I'm just thinking of like artists that just have like albums and mixtapes and just like a long ass catalog of stuff. And realistically, outside of the diehard, there may be some songs that just aren't gonna get as much love, as much attention. Like Snoop Dogg, who is another one that's been fighting this whole streaming thing for a long time. And just imagine like a couple of their songs that you might play. Like, I might play a Scarface track from '93, and what if I'm the only person during a 30-day period, 31-day period that plays that song? That song does not generate any revenue for those artists. And I know, like I said, they have a humongous catalog, so there's gonna be plenty of stuff that gets played. But even those songs that don't meet those thresholds, it's that little bit of money should still go to those artists. So, like I said, for consumers, if you are complaining about music sounding the same all the time, that the artists that are coming out today don't feel as special and don't feel like stars like they used to back in the day, and the music doesn't stick with you anymore, because people focus on TikTok and they focus on social media trends and things like that, but it really started with Spotify. Songs used to be 3 minutes, 4 minutes long. Now they're like some of them are barely hitting a minute or a minute and a half because of how streaming is set up. Are you tired of albums that drop and they have 20, 30, 40 songs on them? I'm talking about Chris Brown, but there's a lot of artists that do it. Like, if you're tired, that's part of the streaming game. You back in the day, nobody was really putting out albums that damn long. At least not that consistently. It was not a common thing like it is now. Or these short, barely 2-minute songs or 1.5-minute songs. That was not a thing before streaming. That would be an interlude on somebody's album, but that wouldn't be somebody's entire album or entire body of work. Like, that's because of streaming. That existed before TikTok. TikTok just it was just like the latest symptom of it. But it gets popular on TikTok, it becomes the highest streamed song on Spotify or Tidal or whatever. And, people see that and they follow suit. It still goes back to streaming. So if you're tired of that as a listener of music and as an artist, like, I don't like the streaming game at all. Like, I feel like it's basically the same fight of trying to get attention, to build an audience, and, to eventually make this a career. I'm like, now it's gotten even worse because of streaming. That fight was always there, but now it's to the point where it feels worse because it's not even as much of a return on all that time and effort on the music side. Like, so major label artists, independent artists, consumers, I feel like we need to walk away from Spotify. Like, subscribe to Tidal, subscribe to Apple Music, subscribe to Deezer or YouTube Music or whatever you would make your alternative. But we need to walk away from Spotify. Because if this becomes a successful business model and these changes, because they are going to make more money from this, and artists are going to see less money from this. If this is successful, because it doesn't phase how people view their business model, and people are going to still consume music, and artists are still going to promote and keep Spotify as the industry standard, then other streaming platforms are going to likely follow suit and are going to put these thresholds in place that are going to continue to fuck over artists, major or independent. So that is really my only solution. And like, I'm definitely flirting with the idea of like, we just need to get back to, I don't know if physical media is the answer. I mean, there are a lot of cars that don't even have CD players in them anymore, or cassette players anymore. But like physical media, direct to consumer downloads, whatever it is, we need. I really want to get back to that. Like, I just know if these changes go through with Spotify, I probably won't have my next album on Spotify or any of my next music going forward. Like, honestly, like, and I've been talking about it, and I haven't like made it official yet, but I've been thinking about this being my last album, not because of anything personal. I don't feel like I'm gonna be successful, because to a certain level I am successful as an artist. You know, I may not have met the success that I thought I was going to meet when I first started my journey as a kid out of Fayetteville, North Carolina, but I feel fulfilled. I really enjoy and love music and the creation of music and promoting music and being an artist. But the return on investment, it's just like the way that the industry is set up now, it really is disheartening. And I think it's just like, I don't know. It just doesn't feel the same. And like stuff like this, these changes with Spotify just kind of like confirm that feeling more and more to me. But let me know what y'all think in the in the comments. You know, for anybody that may be seeing this after the fact. Like, I'm not saying this is gonna be my last album. I'm not saying I'm walking away from music altogether, but I'm just saying, like, there's a reason why I'm flirting with the idea. And it's shit like this. You know, Spotify. And I really want this conversation to keep going before I wrap up. I really want this, because this isn't something that needs to, have like a week's worth of outrage or a month's worth of outrage. They're planning on implementing this at the beginning or the first quarter of 2024. So this is right around the corner. And I feel like this conversation and like a real proactive action needs to be taken because this isn't something that's just like a few streams for one particular artist. This is going to have big ramifications across the board. And as a consumer, as a fan of music, and as a music artist myself, like, I feel like this is something that, like, we've been putting up with this shit for years now at this point, and it's only gotten worse. It has not gotten better. Streaming has not had any type of positive effect on music other than the fact that you're able to get your music to your fans a little easier, and even that is a stretch. But I will say that if we really want things to get better, this is where we gotta start. We can't let this go through and be unchallenged. But that's all I got to say. It's your boy Vinny Dangerous. I catch you at the next stream, 14:30 live. Much love.